Welcome back to the Be a Man podcast, where we encourage men to be better men. I'm glad you are with me. Today, I have a lot to talk about. It will be a shorter episode, but I think you're going to really enjoy this. I've been excited to come back on. I hope you've been enjoying the videos we've been doing lately. A lot of great men having on. I hope you've been challenged. Jerry, please pray for Jerry. He's been struggling. He was in a car accident with his son. His son's okay, but Jerry's had to have some surgeries and different things. So please continue to keep him in your prayers as you think about it. And I hope you enjoyed his episode that we recorded together. Go pick up his book as well. It's been great. Great read, very challenging in multiple areas. So please do that. Shoot him a message on Twitter or Instagram, letting him know you're thinking about him, praying for him, all those sorts of things. I think he'd really appreciate that as well. But before we jump into it, there's another episode next week with Greg. I think you'll really enjoy that one as well. And then we'll do a Christmas episode on the 20th that I hope you enjoy. Might get some extra little helpers to join me for that one. But for today, I want to share with you a story I came across probably a year or two ago, but I think it's very challenging for this time of year. It's about the song, and you may be able to hear it in the background. I have playing in the background, but it's called I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. And I think there's many different ways people come to this time of year. It can be a very dark and lonely time for many. Maybe you've lost a loved one. Maybe you're dealing with job uncertainty, maybe a friendship or sickness or health or whatever it may be. But there could be lots of reasons why you are struggling right now. And I think this is a story that offers a lot of encouragement. I'm actually going to share this on Sunday as well, because I do think it speaks to that Isaiah 9 passage where we know Jesus as our Prince of Peace. And for unbelievers, they can't quite fathom what that exactly means, the peace that passes all understanding. But for Christians, we know what that is. We know what that peace that passes all understanding really feels like. And this is a story about a Christmas song that is sometimes sung, sometimes not. Probably most famous recently by Casting Crowns when they sing it. But I think you might be encouraged by this as well, to learn the history and what this man, Henry Longfellow, had to go through as a man who faced some very difficult times. But here's the story. All right. In March of 1863, an 18-year-old Charles Longfellow, Henry's son, was at his family's house in Massachusetts, and he actually their house was actually used by George Washington from 1775 to 1776, and they bought it and they began to use it as their home. And unbeknownst to his family, Charles, he boarded a train headed for Washington, D.C. He was going to travel over 400 miles to join the Union Army to fight for Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. Well, Charles, he was the oldest of 6 kids. He thought his responsibility, his duty to his country, all those things, to go and fight for the Union Army, for what he believed in. And to give a little backstory, less than 2 years earlier, Charles's mom, Fanny, had actually died from a fire. Not all the details are known, but her dress had actually caught on fire, and her husband, Henry, was actually asleep, and he woke up to the screaming and different things, and he actually tried to put out the fire in many different ways. He He grabbed a rug. Tried to use his own body, and he finally got it out. But she had suffered such severe burns that the next day she actually passed away. And Henry himself was so burnt and so injured that he couldn't go to his own wife's funeral as he recovered. And for Henry, most of the pictures we see, he has a beard, and he did not typically have that in his earlier days, but because of the burning and scarring and different things, he grew that out to cover up much of those scars and burn marks that he had from trying to save his wife. And as you can imagine, this man, he lived with a great deal of grief and sadness after this. So 2 years later, Charles, he's getting ready. He's going to DC. You had to get permission if you were only 18 to join. With his dad and his mom, who had passed away, weren't there to give that. He wrote back and he was given that permission. His dad knew some very influential people during that time. He joined as a private the 1st Massachusetts Artillery. And as he did so, he actually impressed his leaders with his abilities, his skills. He was very, very good at what he did. He was assigned to the Battle of Chancellorsville in Virginia. Now, he didn't really see any action there, but he basically just guarded wagons. But as you can imagine, probably not his favorite idea. But shortly after this, he actually came down with what we probably think was either typhoid fever or something like it. And he struggled. He had to actually go back home for a little while. And then as he was there, he missed the Battle of Gettysburg, which I'm sure he would have been involved in as a private during that time. But after he rejoined later in 1863, he rejoined, and not much was known. But on the first day of December 1st, Henry, Charles's dad, received a telegram, and it said that Charles had been severely injured in battle, thought to be near death. Many of the initial reports thought he had been shot in the face. That later proved to not be true. What actually happened is that as it was during the Mine Run campaign, Charles had actually been shot through the left shoulder, and it went through his back and came out right under his right shoulder blade, barely missing his spine. They initially thought he was going to be paralyzed, but later on it did not come to fruition. It barely missed his spine, barely missed paralyzing him for the foreseeable future. But as any father would do, Henry packed up. He took one of his sons, Ernest, to set out for Washington, D.C. That's where Charlie had been transported. That's where he would be picked up. So he came on December 3rd, and Charles would arrive a few days later. And, as any father would be, he was alarmed. He was hearing very serious concerns, paralysis, all those things that go along, those scary thoughts. This man had been through so much already, but then over time he began to get some better reports, and the healing would take a very, very long time. But as Henry stood there, it had come around a few weeks, and Christmas Day was there, and as Henry was looking out, he was widowed. He had 6 children. One he lost actually as an infant. He and his wife did, but 6 children. He looks out and he sees the devastation that is around him, and he sees the horribleness that is war, and he's trying to find something to find peace in, find hope in. And as he begins to do that, the story goes that he began to hear some Christmas church bells, and they were ringing, and he could hear the singing of peace on earth. And as he observed the where he was and the world around him, he began to question, man, where is God in all of this? And yet, as we'll see here in just a few minutes, he recognized that in spite of all that had happened, in spite of all that was happening, the horribleness of war, he knew that God is alive and righteousness shall prevail. And he wrote these words. And you know the song, you can hum it along if you want to, but I'll just read. It was a poem. It says, I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And thought how, as the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Till ringing, singing on its way, the world revolved from night to day. A voice, a chime, a chant sublime of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then from each black accursed mouth the cannon thundered in the south, and with the sound the carols drowned of peace on earth, goodwill to men. It was as if an earthquake rent the hearthstones of a continent, and made forlorn the households born of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep, God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. I read that this week, and I thought how encouraging it is to be reminded of a story, a man who honored God, who lived for God, who recognized God's authority in his life, and despite all that was going on around him, he found peace on earth, goodwill to men, as he thought about all that God is, all that God will do, and all that God is and has blessed him with. And I wanted to read that to you today. I hope it's encouraging to you. I don't know what all you guys are going through right now. I know what some of you are going through, but I know this time of year especially can be difficult with different things that come up and the busyness and all that. Take some moments, remind yourself that God is good. God will prevail. He is the Almighty Sovereign One we serve, and it is an amazing opportunity, a humbling opportunity to do just that. So I hope that you're encouraged by this. I hope that you will go share it with a friend, and I hope that this encourages you to be a better man this week.